Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, June 12th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm very happy to be joined by Alex Gleitman. Alex, very exciting day for Ohio State as the Buckeyes will have a press conference at 11 a.m. today to announce Chris Holtmann as the 14th head men's basketball coach in school history. Alex, what do you think about the Chris Holtmann hire?
I think it's a very good hire on the surface. I was more saying it while Greg McDermott's name was being floated around for Ohio State as the head coach, but really can't judge this hire until we're probably about 2 to 3 years in, I would say. I think this year, I think the roster is okay. I don't think it's that deep. I think that they're potentially still lacking NBA talent on the roster, depending on how Keita Bates-Diop comes back. But I think this year is kind of a wash in a sense. I think you want to see the team play really hard and maybe make the tournament. I think they're capable of it. But you want to see them play hard and just take steps in the right direction and see the culture start to change and things like that. But I think year 2 and then year 3 is really when you're going to be able to judge this hire. But on the surface, again, I think Chris Holtmann's a great hire. Everyone I talk to in the basketball world speaks extremely highly of the guy. What he's been able to do at Butler and continuing that success. Last year they had a great team. They made the Sweet 16. They just happened to run into the eventual national champion, UNC. But, recruiting, bringing in some good talent. He flipped a kid from Pittsburgh. He got Kyle Young over Ohio State, an Ohio kid. And Kyle also had offers from Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan State, etc. And I think he's young. He has a lot of energy. He's almost what that motto was, what it was 13, 14 years ago when Ohio State brought Thad Matta in from Xavier. I think Thad probably had a little bit more success and a little bit of a better resume coming in, having brought Xavier to the Elite Eight and National Player of the Year and David West and doing a good job as Butler before that. But I think Chris Holtmann is kind of that younger guy with energy. He's got a good staff that I think he's going to bring with him. We should find out more on that today. And I think, he probably wasn't their first choice. But I think, between the timing and just unrealistic first choices, I think this is the guy. I had a handful of guys on my list that I wanted Ohio State to get when the search began, and he was one of those 5. So I think it's a good hire for Ohio State, again, having him not even gotten a recruit or coached a game yet.
Ohio State fans in general seem to like this hire. As you mentioned, we won't know for sure if it's a good hire until we look back on it down the road. But do you think Ohio State fans are completely on board with this because they were scared of getting McDermott and they're just happy it's not McDermott and they're happy it's Holtmann? Do you think they would have – because I'm with you. I never thought Billy Donovan or some of those names were floated. I thought those were pipe dreams. I thought of the candidates that were actually realistic, I thought Holtmann was really the best candidate of the realistic candidates. What do you make of Buckeye Nation kind of welcoming Chris Holtmann? Do you think it's kind of in fear of McDermott? Do you think they just like Holtmann or a little bit of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I do think if timing was different, perhaps the names Billy Donovan and Sean Miller may have been realistic. Maybe next April, perhaps. Maybe next March. Maybe those names are a little bit more realistic. I think Chris Mack was a name that I guess you consider realistic, but I think he's holding out for the Louisville job from what I hear. And then, Shaka Smart, I think the timing wasn't right on that, but some people I think even prefer Chris Holtmann from the start to Shaka Smart. But, I think once the whole McDermott thing happened, people said, oh my God, this is real. This could be what it is. And who knows, maybe Greg McDermott would have been a great head coach at Ohio State. We don't know. But the names, all of a sudden, Chris Holtmann looked like, the next John Wooden to Ohio State fans. And, even guys like Buzz Williams and Steve Wojciechowski and guys like that, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, I'd rather those guys than Greg McDermott. So I think there was a lot of relief and excitement about Holtmann, given the whole McDermott thing the night before Holtmann kind of got back into this thing. But I also think, again, someone like myself from the start, I probably had about 5 names that I would love to see Ohio State land. And Chris Holtmann, he may have been the 4th or 5th name on that list, but he was one of those 5 guys. And I think a lot of Ohio State fans felt the same. And so they're happy about it for multiple reasons.
And you mentioned that he's going to probably bring his entire coaching staff with him from Butler. He's going to address this later today, as you mentioned. What is the latest right now that you're hearing? Do you think the entire Butler coaching staff will join him at Ohio State?
I'm not sure if the entire staff will. I've heard it's a near certainty, 99.9%, or I've actually been told it's done, but Mike Schrage, an assistant who was at Butler just for 1 year. He was at Stanford for about 9 years before that. He was at Duke as the director of basketball ops and maybe a couple other stops along the way. I know he was a student manager for Bobby Knight out in Indiana, way back when. So I'm pretty sure he's going to come. Ryan Peden, he is he is the top recruiting assistant at Butler. And Ryan is a Columbus native, actually. He went to Miami, Ohio. He coached at Miami, Ohio. I believe he coached at OU, a couple other places in the region. And I'm pretty certain Ryan's going to come over with Chris Holtmann, should he not get the Butler job, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And then the third on-bench assistant they have is Terry Johnson, who's kind of the defensive guy. He's a good recruiter, but he's kind of a Butler guy through and through, and so it should be interesting to see. I've been told it depends who gets the Butler head coaching job, whether Terry stays or not, but there's a good chance he could potentially come as well. If he doesn't come, he's an African-American coach, and usually you need at least one on the staff. And so I think that if he doesn't come over, look for, that empty spot on Chris Holtmann's bench to be an African American. And then, there's a couple other staffers that could come over. They may not. We'll see how that shakes out. But when you're talking about the main three assistants, I think Peden and Schrage are looking pretty good at this point. But hopefully we'll find out some more today on that.
And as far as recruiting, I'm sure that he's going to go after Kyle Young, who committed to him at Butler. And I can't imagine Kyle Young, a kid from Ohio, was going to play for Chris Holtmann at Butler, but wouldn't play for Chris Holtmann at Ohio State. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Give the listeners some insights on Kyle Young and maybe some other recruits that you think the Buckeyes could get in on pretty quickly. Yeah,
I've heard mixed things on Kyle because I think one of the things Kyle liked about Butler outside of the staff and whatever is kind of that smaller, close-knit community type of environment at a school like Butler versus, the big school environment at an Ohio State. And so I think that was very appealing to him. I'm not saying Notre Dame's in the mix here, but he's a Notre Dame type of kid when we talk about that a lot for football. And obviously it holds true for basketball. Now, I don't believe Butler's a private school. It might be. I know it's in Indianapolis, but it's a smaller school than Ohio State. There's no doubt about that. You probably, when you go to Ohio State, you're going to have 10,000 kids in your class. You're certainly not going to know all of them, most of them, half of them, probably even a quarter of them. When you go to Butler, you're going to know a lot of people when you walk around campus. When you go to Notre Dame, you're going to know a lot of people around campus. So I think Kyle likes that smaller school feel. That said, as you said, Dave, a lot of people are also telling me, he loves Chris Holtmann, he loves the staff. Ryan Peden's the guy who really recruited him. So if Ryan comes over to Ohio State, I think it's going to be really hard for Kyle to say no. And I think if that happens, I would, if there was the crystal ball was open, I think I would put my crystal ball pick on Kyle Young to Ohio State if Ryan comes over. And I still think it's kind of a 50-50 deal, even if he doesn't come over, because as you said, he's an Ohio kid. Ohio State's closer than Butler. While the Big East is a very good basketball conference, the Big Ten is still a bigger stage, especially, you have the football deal, you have just, the power of the brands in the conference outside of Ohio State. It's, the TV deal, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a bigger brand. And if he fits the style that Chris Holtmann plays and he wants to play in that system and thinks that's what's going to help him accomplish his goals, both team and individual, I think it's, as you said, it's going to be hard for him to say no to Ohio State at the end of the day.
Is there anybody else that might be imminent to join Ohio State's basketball program as far as a recruit, whether it's 2017 right away or even a 2018 recruit? Are you hearing anybody could jump on this train relatively quickly?
No, I haven't heard anything regarding, it being quickly. I know they just he made his first offer to Elijah Weaver, a point guard out of Florida, and I think Elijah liked the staff a ton at Butler. I think when he visited Butler, from what I hear, he loved the way of the program and everything like that, but he didn't love the facilities and the campus and everything like that. But obviously that's a completely different ballgame at Ohio State. I've never seen Butler's facilities, but I have to imagine Ohio State's are much nicer, and obviously the campus and everything like that will be much more impressive to him. Right now I'm told Villanova is kind of the team to beat, but that Ohio State will absolutely be in the game here, but they need a visit. Outside of that, I think a big focus is going to be on this Ohio class of 2018. You're going to have Chris Holtmann going after the Jerome Hunters of the world. I'm sure he'll give Darius Baisley a call if he thinks he's a guy who he wants to get back in the fold at Ohio State. Same with Kyle Ahrens. He just decommitted. I'm kind of surprised he decommitted and opened things up so quickly. I thought he might wait to see who the head coach was, like Dane Goodwin, who I think Dane will stick, by the way. But I think they'll look back at Kyle again. And there's another, Pete Nance. There's a guy, Marcus Bingham Jr. up in Michigan, who's a 6'10" power forward that I think they'll go after pretty hard. So, there's a number of players in Ohio in the class of 2018. There's obviously a couple really good 2019 kids, and even just the Columbus area that I think will go after really hard. But I don't see anyone imminent. I mean, they might look at a transfer for 2017, or if there's any grad transfers out there, maybe help the team this coming year, but nothing imminent right now.
Let's close with some football. I can hear everybody rejoicing as they're listening to the podcast. Master Teague, running back, became the 13th commitment in Ohio State's very impressive 2018 recruiting class yesterday. He's only a 3-star kid right now per the composite. I have to imagine that's going to change. He's ranked as the number 25 running back in the country according to the 24/7 Sports composite. Looks like the 24/7 Sports in-house rankings like him a lot more than the composite. But just tell the listeners about Master Teague. Is he a little underrated? Who did Ohio State beat out for him? Just tell us about Master Teague.
Yeah, definitely underrated. Steve Wilfong, I know Master well, but Steve has obviously seen more running backs than me or probably anyone in the country, throughout the last 6 months, going to every opening regional and, all that stuff. And Steve thinks he's, outside of Zamir White, he could be you can argue he's the number 2 running back in the country. And he says the same thing for Brian Snead. So Ohio State arguably right now could have the number 2 or 3 running backs in the country. And in talking to Masters coaches, from an on-field perspective, once he gets downhill, he's gone. So you saw that with the 4.31 and 4.37 40-yard dash times. He notched at Ohio State's camp. He's a big, strong kid. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. He can run off tackle really well. The things I think he needs to improve on is his lateral quickness and lateral shiftiness, and as well as his ability to catch the football. But I've been told he's a good blocker, and he's just a hard-nosed runner. Who's going to do anything he can to get that extra yard for his team. And off the field, I actually put out an article yesterday after he committed, titled Coach Speak, and what Ohio State's getting Master Teague. And I spoke to Master's head coach and 2 assistant coaches, and I've spoken to them throughout this process. And it's just absolutely incredible what people say about this kid off the field. He trains with it. He has practice with his team in the morning and then goes to a trainer in the afternoon. If he misses a block in practice, he doesn't just shake it off like a normal kid would do. He stays after practice for an hour working on that same pass protection until he gets it right. He's the first one on the field. He's the last one off the field. He stays after practice to clean up, which is something that's normally designated for the freshmen and sophomores on the varsity team. And I'm told an upperclassman never does that, let alone a star upperclassman, at least at Blackman. And that's the type of kid Master Teague is. And so Ohio State's not only getting a very good running back on the field, but I think they're getting like a 5-star kid off the field as far as his work ethic, his passion, and everything like that. And I think that's the type of stuff that pushed Tony Alford and Urban Meyer over the edge to say, okay, we're going to take this kid now because we know this kid is going to bust his rear end every single day to get better. And he's exactly the type of kid Urban Meyer is looking for in his program.
Great stuff. I love it. Great stuff, Alex Gleitman. As always, really appreciate it, Alex. And again, Bucknutters, keep it locked to Bucknuts all day. We're going to have coverage of the Chris Holtmann press conference. We're going to have 3 staff members there. We'd bring Alex, too, if he wasn't in New York City, but it's going to be myself and Steve Hellwagon and Patrick Murphy there. Again, keep it locked to Bucknuts all day long. Thanks again to Alex Gleitman, and thanks again to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.